Social media over the years has absolutely exploded. Thanks to applications like TikTok, we are so much more interconnected than we have ever been in the history of mankind. Thanks to TikTok, you can now be on your phone in Shanghai and see what somebody is up to on a day-to-day basis in Washington, D.C. You can be on your phone in Tokyo. You can see what somebody's doing in Luton. If you'd really want to do that. I'm not sure why you'd want to do that, but you can do that thanks to all of these applications. And just in general, at face value, with the interconnectivity that we have in this world right now, you'd think it would be a wonderful and beautiful thing. Until, well, one of those people you meet via the good old interconnectivity turns out to be, well, a little bit dodgy. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to yet again another example of that with FELIX CIPHER, also known as the most insane TikToker in the history of the entire platform, who recently returned. And you know, how you will take in that sentence kind of depends on whether you have a chronic social media addiction or not. For example, if you don't have a social media addiction, you'll probably just be wondering, well, who is FELIX? But if you do have a chronic social media addiction, and yes, I'm speaking to the 50% of the individuals watching this right now who probably have 6+ hours average screen time on a day-to-day basis, your reaction will probably be, oh my god, no, don't say, no, he can't be back, no, please, I thought this was over. How has he escaped from containment? How has this happened? And to be honest with you, both of those reactions are pretty reasonable in this context. So in today's video, what I want to do is explore FELIX CIPHER'S entire story. Whilst I have covered FELIX in the past in a brief 26-minute video, today I want to go through absolutely everything, as recently I have discovered so much new information about FELIX CIPHER, and I just in general want to go into a massive deep dive into all of this new information, but I also want to go over the previous things that we've covered, but in far more detail. Because ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to a case like FELIX CIPHER, I think it is only fair and honestly just the right thing to do to provide as much context as possible, because I'm not even exaggerating when I say that this person is the most insane TikToker of all time. This is genuinely a very special case. I know sometimes I'm a bit exaggerative saying the greatest scam of all time, and yes, I am dunking on a recent video of mine, but in this case, it's pretty fair to say that this guy is absolutely nutty. So in this deep dive, what I want to do is explore, yes, his social media, but also everything to do with FELIX, his beginnings, his hidden TUMBLR blogs, his political beliefs, his own secret language that he has developed, and TikTokers have dedicated their time into deciphering what these words actually say, and also his multiple books, his lost German memoirs, his hidden interviews, and even FELIX's love for, well, eggs. And yes, as you can probably tell, this is going to be a big old disastrous mess, so the best place we can probably start off here is with the simple question of, who is FELIX CIPHER? So ladies and gentlemen, let's get started. Pretty much at face value, if you were coming onto the internet and looked up FELIX CIPHER, what you would find is an American former TikToker who claims to be obsessed with snakes, but is also the author of multiple fantasy novels. And naturally, if you knew nothing about FELIX and you heard that, you'd probably think to yourself, wow, this guy is a very interesting bloke. An author, somebody who has a fascination with snakes, that's great. This guy seems fairly fascinating. And I am inclined to agree that yes, FELIX is fascinating, but fascinating for not really the good reasons. You see, FELIX CIPHER is not exactly known for his world-renowned fantasy novels. No, in fact, I would go as far to say that I don't think a single human being has actually read these things, and honestly, probably for good measure. But FELIX CIPHER is actually known and gained a lot of notoriety in early 2023 because of a few noticeable characteristics which naturally caused a lot of controversy. And I'm just going to cut to the chase here. Pretty much, the internet at one point of time this year discovered that FELIX the TikToker believes that he is the reincarnation of a certain political leader who was born in Australia and led a German political party in the 1930s and 40s. The only reason I'm being a bit coy about this is because I know YouTube are a little bit sensitive, and understandably, about the certain words which could be placed in these sentences, but he let's just say this, believes that he is a reincarnated art student. And as you can see from Felix's appearance, he's actually gone to a lot of effort to alter his appearance to making it look like he is the said terrible Austrian German political leader person. And yes, the main reason that people kind of noticed this was mainly because of Felix's choice of dress sense. He absolutely loves to dress up as you-know-who, and it's not like Felix was even like coy or shy about speaking about his reincarnated past, as he says. No, Felix himself was actually very, I don't know what the word is, braggadocious. He liked to brag pretty much that he indeed was the, or at least believed to be the reincarnated version of you-know-who. And ladies and gentlemen, there are plenty of examples of this, so we can just start off with his base opinions. For example, he uploaded a TikTok, and in the TikTok you can see the text that says, his controversial opinion is that the world would be better off without most sectors of humanity. And yes, just like a certain German political party leader in the 1940s who was born in Austria and happened to fail art school, these opinions kind of coincide with each other, and naturally so, the moment people saw this, they started to get a little bit concerned. Not because, you know, this person believes that they're the reincarnated version of that said leader, but just in general, anybody holding those beliefs outside of believing they're a reincarnated terrible person, it's a concerning thing. Well, not just concerning. These people, you know, usually should be in a prison cell. This isn't exactly a good thing. These beliefs are well, they are just absolutely terrible. And naturally, a lot of people started to do a bit more digging, and that led to discoveries such as this. As you can see here, he says, commies are a cult of brain-dead jackasses that don't understand how humanity functions. And then in the TikTok, he is wearing these massive boots, which also resemble clothing that certain people in the German political party in the 1940s used to wear, and on those boots it's got German writing, and when you translate them it says progress above everything and also keep striving. And these phrases are again two phrases that were used by a certain Austrian German political leader. And then people also then went on to discover that he had also posted TikToks of him in his favorite selfies, and as you can see, he is quite clearly wearing, well, you can see what the bloke's wearing here. I'm gonna have to blur a few things because it's just outrage. Like, I'm not like defending anyone here. Don't see this as some form of defense, but usually when somebody holds these horrible beliefs, they keep them to themselves, because usually when somebody holds those beliefs, they're gonna get smacked in the face, they're gonna get put in jail or something like that. But this bloke's coming on TikTok, being all proud and happy that he's, well, whatever the he is. And there are so many posts out there of this guy claiming to just in general be the reincarnated version of you-know-who, and it's just disgusting, whether it's bait or whether it's a joke. To be honest with you, with everything that we're going to go through in this video, I'm not sure if I genuinely believe that this guy is baiting at this point. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he has actually gotten to the point of where he has actually convinced himself that he is the reincarnated version of. I genuinely wouldn't be shocked by this given statements like this, and because of all this, in early 2023, this caused a massive ruckus on social media, and I do not say ruckus lightly. There are a lot of videos out there, people just in general outright shocked and exposing the guy, speaking about him, former girlfriends and friends coming out and speaking about their experiences with the guy, and just in general, people were just saying this is absolutely mental. They've made the twink version of you-know-who. And again, I'm not being a pussy by not saying the bloke's name. It's literally just, I want this video to actually not get age restricted and viewed by people out there. Because honestly, fellas, if there's one actual serious point we can take from this video, is that these people do exist. These people that do worship these absolutely horrific people, the worst people in human history, are being publicly supported and worshipped, and even people pretending that they are actually them people. It's absolutely wild. So I think we should always keep our eyes open to make sure that when we see these people, we do something about it, because we shouldn't just ignore these things. We should speak about these things and make sure that they are not allowed to fester and thrive on social media and not get away with everything. And ladies and gentlemen, usually on social media, when there is a big old controversial statement, you're being cancelled by the entire, well, not, this isn't even a case of being cancelled. This is just people saying, mate, you shouldn't be doing this. You just stop doing, what is this? What? And what is that? Like, I don't know if I'm being a dick here, but I don't know what that nose thing is. I don't know if it's meant to be a mustache. Because is it meant to be a mustache? Because If it is quite correct, but that's beside the point. You can't say that about it given how horrible the context is. But because of all this conversation, Felix was the top of the town in terms of a talking point. He was absolutely everywhere. And Felix, rather than coming out and apologizing, actually doubled down. What?
So I need to tell you guys a little something about me. And you can call me crazy, you can call me whatever you'd like, any name under the sun. But I'm very in tune with my past and my past lives and lifetimes that I've lived before this one. My last life just so happened to be a very infamous one. Me offing myself was one of the first memories I had from that lifetime. It came to me when I was 5 in my nightmares. You can see right where I shot myself too. That and just so many other things throughout my life have connected me to my past. And you can go say, oh, go get on your meds again, you nutter. I've been on so many meds and none of them have changed what I saw when I was 5.
Now, firstly, ladies and gentlemen, as somebody that has been on medication in the past, and I'm sure most of you sick buggers right now are all medicated, that wasn't me attacking you for your possible mental disorders. So maybe it was. Maybe I'm the one that should be cancelled here. But what I'm saying here is whether you're medicated or you're not medicated, I know plenty of medicated people, and what they don't usually do is create a social media platform where they are claiming to be the reincarnated version of some of the worst people in human history. That usually isn't a justification, and I know he technically isn't doing that here, but just the mere premise of him mentioning his medication kind of identifies that this person does have some form of history of mental illness. But I will just say, given everything and all of the research that I've gone through whilst making this video, I don't think medication or being off medication is really the reasoning for some of the things that he has done. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this has been going on for a very long time at this point. But yes, this is pretty much why the internet now knows who FELIX CIPHER was. Before 2023, absolutely nobody really had an idea of who Felix was. I'm sure he had a little bit of a small following, but now the guy pretty much has gone global. He has spoken about everybody, and as I said at the beginning of this video, social media was like a gift that we were given. You know, the greatest technological inventors of our time all one time collectively came together and started building these wonderful platforms where we can share cultures, information, jokes, comedy, fun, movies, books, information, literature, music, everything. And what did it result in? This thing? I feel like that's even a compliment by calling something a... But with him coming out and even doubling down on him being the reincarnated version of you-know-who, it pretty much just resulted in an even bigger media shitstorm. Media sites were covering Felix, YouTubers were speaking about Felix, hey look, it's me, and then there were TikTokers speaking about Felix. Everybody was speaking about FELIX CIPHER, and usually when there is a massive controversy like this, it does lead to leaks, and that is exactly what happened, because family members saw Felix's actions, friends saw Felix... I know it's quite mad to think that Felix may have a friend, but Felix did have friends and he saw these things, his family members saw this stuff, and yeah, we will go into that, but I do just quickly want to interject here and say, could you just do me a favor and please subscribe to the YouTube channel? I know I've completely knocked off the pacing here, but pretty much I've got to ask you guys, because I think it's actually like 60% of you now are not subscribed. That's not even a joke. Like, look at this. Please do me a favor. Okay, let's actually get into these messages. Sorry, I had to ask, alright? Oh, and if you could like the video as well, that would be absolutely amazing. Okay, that's everything. Let's continue. And comment beans too. Thanks. A lot of messages were leaked of pretty much family members saying things such as, my family is from Russia. Bearing in mind this is Felix's family member, I have to reiterate that. And we had so many family members killed during World War II. Sorry, I can't say that word because of YouTube rules. And to say I'm horrified is an understatement. Thank you for letting me know about this. So let's take some things into context here. This is the thing, and obviously we know what the person Felix is claiming to be reincarnated from did in the past. And given the messages from Felix's family members, this means that his family were directly affected by this absolutely disgusting and horrible person, arguably the worst person in human history. And he still came onto social media and did the things that he did. This is why I dubbed this guy as the most insane man in the history of TikTok. But ladies and gentlemen, it only gets worse. Because talking of people directly affected by the actions of the person Felix is claiming to be reincarnated from, somebody who survived World War II in some of the worst, most awful places and conditions basically duetted a TikTok of Felix Felix dressed up in his horrible memorabilia and said, just in general, this isn't cool. And honestly, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's a bit of an understatement. This dude has got the license and right to say whatever he wants. If he wanted to go on a 2-hour bullying session on FELIX CIPHER, I think we'd all have to sit back and accept it and honestly just clap and say, you know what, mate, continue doing what you're doing. Because what Felix is doing is absolutely disgusting, and this person literally was directly affected by these horrible people from the 1940s that Felix is claiming to be a part of. And you're probably wondering, well, how did Felix actually respond to this? Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can probably guess. Look, I'm laughing just because of how absolutely mental this is. Absolutely insane. Felix responded by saying this. Haha, it's me. Sorry my men had you in a camp, old pal, but I'm back for a reason. So naturally, ladies and gentlemen, the internet saw this and thought, oh, this isn't like a funny bait joke game thing. This is like a guy actually who is just an absolutely terrible human. I mean, he was terrible before this, but this is just absolutely insane. And naturally, when you've got the family members being exposed to this, friends being exposed to this, people out there started to do some digging. They contacted former employers or even possible employers such as Starbucks, and Starbucks then even had to make like a statement responding to all of this where they said this. Thank you so much for contacting Starbucks with concerns about this post. We want to assure you that Starbucks took this matter very seriously and a prompt and thorough investigation was performed, and we can confirm that the one who made these very inappropriate posts is no longer employed with Starbucks. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, people were doing even more digging because people couldn't really decipher, was the guy still working with Starbucks when he started to make these posts, and was he then fired because of them, or did he just get fired in the past? And usually I wouldn't really speak about these like very personal things. Like when I speak about an individual who's done something wrong on the internet, I usually wouldn't laugh when somebody has got them fired from their own job. But come on, I feel like this warrants it this warrants it in this one time. This one comment, I think, warrants this. I'm not saying to go and do it, by the way. I'm just saying, in reflection to events that have already happened, I'm not going to get really mad at these events for happening. And because of this, people then went and found his actual employer, and they confirmed that because of the posts that he had been making, they had terminated his contract with them. Pretty much, Felix's life at this point of time was absolutely falling apart, mainly because, you know, any human sane person would see this stuff and think, yeah, this is, you know, absolutely batshit crazy. And with this, leaked DMs came out of Felix clearly starting to feel the heat. And to be honest with you, as much as there is a lot of sensitive things in these DMs, most of it does just seem like a bit of a pity party, like, oh, it's the consequences of my own actions sort of thing. Like, let's be real, ladies and gentlemen, me and you know, if you go on the internet, you're dressing up as that person, obviously there's going to be severe consequences to your actions, given the fact that these people did horrible and are still doing horrible things to this day. Like, let's be real here. You can't have a pity party like he's doing in these messages, and it's very clear that Felix was spiraling, and he was even saying things such as, I'm just a POS who cannot handle bad tastes. Now, to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say that this isn't just a bad taste. This is like, it tastes of dog. That's the level of taste we've got going on here. And I think these DMs are a pretty good example of who Felix is as a person. Despite being called out for, in my opinion, extremely valid things, he still somehow managed to victimize himself in this situation. And the reality is all of these things that he was called out for, and even being fired from his jobs, in my opinion, are personally reasonable. And honestly, I think he's gotten off lightly here. The fact that you can actually just go around, I'm not even going to say it, but doing this is absolutely insane to me. But ladies and gentlemen, strangely enough, some friends of Felix actually then came out to defend Felix using the mental illness defense. And as I said earlier in this video, I know a lot of mentally ill people. I mean, most of them are watching this video right now, and I don't think that these people are going to have a bad day, you know, a little bad brain day, and suddenly turn to TikTok saying, you know what, I am the reincarnated version of... I've just said a lot of bad people, pretty much. I don't think they're going to one day say that they are a reincarnated version of those people, pretty much. Because that's not what a normal human being does! And ladies and gentlemen, being mentally ill doesn't make you abnormal. It just means that you've got some struggles in your life. And yes, it can affect how you act on a day-to-day basis. But this isn't acting out. This is just messed up. But they then say, fun fact, doxing a mentally ill person, telling them to K themselves and trying to isolate them from friends they still have is actually really disgusting and childish. So please have humility. My brother in Christ, he literally said that most of humanity shouldn't exist, pretty much. Have humility. There's no humility in that. He's literally saying, get rid of them. Get rid of the humans. That's what he's saying. He's the one in this situation that needs to have some humility. I think that's actually the main problem here. And look, yes, I get it. Doxing's a bad thing. You know, don't dox human beings. I agree. But there is one thing I've noticed when it comes to the internet and people getting called out and getting the consequences of their own actions. A thing that people love to do is be like, oh, I was sent death threats and oh, I was doxed. And usually, yes, those things do happen. But the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, it's like 0.1, not even that, 0.0001% of the people that actually do that in these situations. The other 99.999% of the people out there are just giving fair criticism, saying, hey man, this is an absolutely shitty thing to do, and this is why I think it's shitty. These people aren't all doxing Felix. They aren't all going out there trying to ruin the guy's life. They're just giving fair criticism. But I think the reason people out there love to be like, I was doxed and I got death threats. And yes, these things are very serious things, but I think the reason a lot of people like to do this in situations where they're being validly called out is because they are serious actions, those doxing events and stuff like that. And with that, people will start to be like, oh, maybe we should lay off so these things don't happen. It's a very textbook manipulator action. I mean, these sort of things happen in relationships, you know, or even bad friendships. Somebody does something shitty and then they're like, oh, my dog's got nose cancer or something like that. They'll give you a very emotional thing that's happened to them, and that'll instantly cause you to have empathy. Be like, oh yeah, that's true. I'll walk away with my valid criticism, and you can get away with it. That's why these people do this. They don't actually care usually that they've been doxed or they've had something bad happen to them. They just want to use their own suffering and trauma as a get out of jail free card. And it's pretty ironic because this guy isn't going to jail. He's just being called a knob on Twitter. And Felix, guess what, buddy? Newsflash. You are a knob, and you probably are on Twitter. Blaming this whole entire thing on a mental health crisis, in my personal opinion, is just absolutely ridiculous. And honestly, it's deceptive, it's manipulative, and it's, again, a perfect character. I can't even speak English. You know what I was trying to say there. An example of who this bloke is. But then again, ladies and gentlemen, did I really need to tell you who this bloke is? He is literally admitting to being who he claims to be. Yeah, that's the case in point of love. End the video, let's go home. Like, we don't need to go any further, but we're going to go further. Because naturally, with Felix's family turning on him, the firing from his workplace, and all of this seemingly just getting a bit too much for him, Felix ran from the internet. His TikTok account was gone, whether it was deleted or deactivated. He left the website. He didn't attempt to come back. His own website was shut down. Everything he had disappeared. It almost felt like Felix's entire story, in a space of a second, had been retconned, had been removed from the history books. So much vanished in an instant, and it seemed the world started to move on and just thought of this as a little weird week in the history of TikTok, and it probably was never going to be spoken about ever again. Until recently. In May 2023, he returned. Yes, he has a new TikTok profile, and yes, he is uploading content once again, but also once again, he's not changed whatsoever. He's not actually apologetic in any form, and in this case, he has actually made an apology, but it is one of the worst apologies that you're probably ever going to see. He came back on his account called Snake Lord 11, and as you can see at this point of time, there are 3 videos, and one of them being himself with the description, "Hello Internet, sorry to say I have sporadically returned, hashtag Felix Cypher, hashtag reincarnation, hashtag me, hashtag I am back, and hashtag take that as you please." And in this TikTok, what he does is give an update on his life, where he's at, but also an apology.
So it's been a while since my involuntary disappearance for 3 months from the internet. I think it's about time that I come back and say something now. First things first, I wanted to make a quick apology to just one person, and that is the survivor who I made a very unsavory comment towards when I was first going viral. I was rather in shock at what was happening, and I was not thinking too clearly, so when I made that comment, it shouldn't have come out that way.
Now, my friends, as somebody who is famous, sorry, why did I do that? As somebody that is famous, as somebody that has a relatively niche audience on social media that makes videos for people that have no better things to be doing in their time, I understand what it's like to occasionally have a banger on social media. You know, at one point of time, I was, let me tell you now, I was known for making a tweet about how Dobby had an actual massive schlong and this was canon in the Harry Potter universe, and you know, there was a lot of attention to that tweet. You know, people were speaking about it. We got a lot of retweets and likes. People were talking about it, but in that certain context, you don't see me then claiming to be the reincarnated version of Voldemort. You don't see that. And just in general, have you ever gotten a banger tweet out there? Good. Have you ever then, you know, claimed to be the reincarnated version of a horrible world leader? I'd hope not. Also, when you go and actually look at the comment itself, I'm just kind of confused to what he meant by, I didn't mean it to come out that way. Just look at this comment for a second. How could this actually come out in, like, any other way? This is, there is no other situation where this could be worded slightly differently for the guy in a TikTok to be like, oh yeah, maybe he's making a good point. It's like, no, Chief, this is absolutely awful, and I think you've just been called out, and even in your apology, you cannot have any levels of sincerity. And the main reason that I know this apology is terrible and completely insincere is because, like, a second after this, he goes on to double down.
I shouldn't have said that to him, so I'm sorry to get in. The next thing that I wanted to say was I have been in treatment for about 3 months now since I was gone. It was for depression, anxiety, and after a attempt, they sent me here. If anyone cares to know, I'm doing a lot better now, so yay for me. However, I do want to just let people know that my views on myself, my past self, whatever, everything that made me blow up in the first place, that hasn't really changed. I don't really predict it changing, honestly. Just, it's affected me for so long. With that being said, I do want to make it clear that I'm probably not going to talk much about this in the future. However, I do want this channel to be more like stuff about my life, artwork, snakes, maybe some music.
I mean, let's be real, people. Is it really a shock that he's an artist? But yes, as you can see, he's pretty much just doubled down on absolutely everything. He's standing by his beliefs and opinions that he is indeed the reincarnated German leader from 1941, and I imagine that means he's going to keep all the memorabilia and everything that he's got, but just in general, he won't be showing it in videos because, you know, the bloke needs to pay rent. You know, he needs to actually have a life outside of whatever this is. So I think his tactic now is to just, continue with this rhetoric, but also just to kind of hide it at the best possible way he can, which also doesn't really make much sense given the fact that he is still admitting to these things in this video, and also kind of exemplifies that Felix is stupid. Felix is a stupid person, because why would you be like, oh yeah, I'm going to kind of keep this on the down low, but also I still do believe that I am the reincarnated version of him. And understandably, you may be wondering, what are these other 2 videos on his TikTok account? Pretty much they just are his snake. And I don't know if snakes lay eggs, but for the love of God, I'm just gonna hope that they don't. And I will have to explain that joke to you at one point in this video. And maybe that's a reason to click off right now, ladies and gentlemen, because this is going to get dark. But yes, at this point of the storyline, Felix has now returned, and I don't really know what he's going to go and actually do with these social media platforms. I'm actually kind of shocked that he's even returned. I don't know how he managed to break out of containment, but this is the reality that we're going to have to actually deal with here. FELIX CIPHER is back, and Oh god. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that kind of brings us into the deep dive aspect of this video. Because yes, we're up to date with everything now, but I think we kind of need some explanations, some reasonings to what is actually going on here, and why does he think these things? Are these things bait? Are they jokes? Is it actually a real thing that he genuinely believes? Well, ladies and gentlemen, over the last few weeks and days, I have been doing the research. I have been like Neo in the Matrix. I have been going through archived websites, finding things out there that have been hidden for years on random websites, blogs. I have been doing a lot of deep fish diving into the world of FELIX CIPHER. And ladies and gentlemen, some of the things I have discovered about this bloke are just absolutely insane. And I think the best place to start in this part of the deep dive is why. Why does FELIX genuinely believe that he is the reincarnated version of that guy? So yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are now at the part of the story where we have to explore why FELIX CIPHER genuinely believes that he is the reincarnated version of you-know-who, and how he even got to this point in his life in the first place. Because you don't just wake up one day and think, oh, I am this individual. We need to really uncover the psyche behind this man, why he does the things that he does, and how he got to this point, and that leads into Google Docs. Because pretty much a document has been publicized in which was found on, I believe, FELIX's own website, and in this document on Google Docs, it's basically a full German memoir about himself. But the problem here is, my friends, I obviously cannot speak the German language, but the even bigger problem is it's very clear that FELIX himself cannot speak the German language, because a lot of people out there have pointed out that the German language used in this, I guess, German memoir is very broken German, and a lot of people have kind of theorized, does this man actually know German, or has he been using Google Translate? But if there is one thing that we can definitely confirm with this document, is that it is 100% made by FELIX CIPHER. If you go to the details, it clearly states right here, original author, FELIX CIPHER. And pretty much what these memoirs are is, well, the life story of FELIX CIPHER, from his alleged past to who he is in the modern day 21st century. Pretty much in this entire document, he explains this is something that's been going on for 10 plus years, and it's something that he's been dealing with for pretty much the majority of his life. And yes, obviously I can't speak German, so I'm not going to be able to read this from the actual script itself, but to be honest with you, I don't think any actual German out there probably understands this either, because as a lot of people have pointed out, it's not really the best German. So instead, what I'm going to do is use artificial intelligence to pretty much do my job for me. I've basically put this entire script into Google Translate, and Google has, you know, tried its best to translate whatever FELIX has written here. And you're going to have to understand that all of the words are a bit mumbo jumbo, so I am just going to kind of use my own mind and fill in the gaps here and there to kind of give a vague understanding of what's actually being said here. But I do think it is very essential that we go through this document, because I think this is honestly the best piece of information in this entire deep dive to truly understand why he is the way he is, how he got to that point, and just in general understand the psyche behind FELIX CIPHER. Because I know obviously he's a massive meme on the internet right now, but as I said, this guy is the most insane man on TikTok, and it's not just something we're going to point and laugh at and move on with our day. No, I want to do everything here. I want to go through every single little bit of detail, so yeah, let's get into this massive big old mess. If you're reading this, it's probably because you think that I'm crazy. Honestly, yeah, because I say that I am the reincarnation of said absolutely terrible human being, but I never say anything like that without a valid argument and evidence behind it. Here is a brief summary of how I came to this conclusion. And ladies and gentlemen, when I started reading this document beforehand, because obviously I've got to go through anything, I've got to actually take a look at this and do my research and write my script, but before I even started reading this, there was a slight thought in my mind of like, what if he actually proves it? obviously he's not going to, and obviously he hasn't, but, you know, there was a chat. There wasn't. I don't even know what I'm saying right now, but the thought was there. But yes, FELIX starts to present his supposed evidence, and that basically starts with his childhood and experiences in life. So, Let's explore the life of Felix Cipher. Ever since I was a little kid, I've never been describable as normal. Not in relation to my age, not in relation to my interests, and especially not in relation to my gender. It started before my birth, when my mother insisted, completely convinced, that they have a boy. Of course, everyone was shocked when I finally became a girl. At preschool age, I was one bossy, loudmouth leader amongst peers. Half Russian/Jewish and half German. I had myself always awkward when it came to our Jewish traditions growing up. My skin was never as olive as it should have been, nor did I have brown, almost black eyes. Although it was almost impossible due to my genetics, my eyes remained blue until adulthood. Now, I think if there's one thing that we can take from this, is that it's very clear and evident that even from a young age, Felix Cipher had some form of identity issues, whether that was related to gender or just in general his heritage and who he is as a human being. Now, that isn't an excuse for absolutely anything, but I think if there's one thing that we should take when it comes to these horrible stories, is that there usually always is an origin story, and I think the reason that we need to speak about those origin stories is so we can prevent them from happening in the future with other people. Because if we pretend that these things don't exist, it's only going to enable these things to fester and continue, and we're going to only get more Felix Ciphers in the future. And obviously, nobody really wants another Felix Cipher. And again, I'm not justifying anything what I speak about here, but I am just saying that I think this is a very valid thing that we need to point out with Felix. There were clearly some issues deep-rooted in this guy from a very young age. But also, if there is another thing that we can take from this segment, is that it does actually confirm some of the things that we went through previously of Felix's family members coming out and speaking about their Russian heritage and just in general how their family members had been absolutely affected by incidents in World War II, which honestly just makes this thing absolutely unbelievably 50 times worse, because if these messages are real, it only makes me look at Felix and think, Jesus Christ, you are even worse than I possibly thought. But yes, the main thing we can take from this is it's clear from a very young age Felix was doubting his heritage, and of course that led to him having, well, I say of course, that's not really a normal thing that happens, but it led to him having certain pieces of thoughts and feelings going into his brain. And let's just continue. As my dear mother tells me, my first career aspiration was to become a military leader, some kind of general maybe. I still vividly remember how I felt when I was 5 years old. My gym teacher saluted. The outrage on her face was extraordinary. Now, ladies and gentlemen, so far into this document, I kind of feel like there isn't any evidence being presented whatsoever, and this just feels like more of a justification for his actions and reasonings and beliefs, because anybody saying that when they were a kid they wanted to be a military leader is a form of evidence to back up that they are the reincarnation of you know who. I think that's an absolutely insane thing to have, because to be honest with you, I don't know if this is a controversial take, but especially in the West, a lot of younger people, in particular kids, want to be in the military when they grow up, because in the culture that we surround ourselves in, particularly in places like Britain, America, there is so much propaganda out there, particularly military propaganda, and when you're young, you probably play games like Call of Duty, you see so many military films, and it makes you think, wow, these things are very cool, I want to grow up and be in the military, and then a lot of people kind of realise that, maybe not. Now, personally, when I was a kid, I actually wanted to be a bin man. I don't know why. Look, it was genuinely a career path which I was interested in, and maybe I still am. If this YouTube thing goes down the drain, maybe I'm going to have to pursue something, and there is absolutely no shame in that. But what I am saying here, Felix, is just because you were 5 years old and thought, oh, the military are pretty cool, doesn't necessarily mean that you are the reincarnation of that guy. But then it moves us into Felix's first experiences with reincarnation. And usually when you're a kid, you've got a lot of first experiences, you know. But Felix's first major experience in life was a flashback to being... well, I'm just going to read it to you now. It's mental. It is absolutely mental that this is even a thing that's been written in a Google document. And honestly, I feel quite dodgy that I've even translated it and put it in my own Google document. I think the Secret Services are probably watching me right now and monitoring every text that I send. At the same age of 5, I experienced my first nightmare that I can remember. A vision of my... and you didn't hear a certain word there, but that word is in yourself. And this is a pretty weird nightmare to have at the age of 5 years old. To be honest with you, when I was 5 years old, I was having nightmares about this bloke. It's a scary film, alright? It's a scary film. Seriously though, that film is messed up. And I don't care what anybody says, this is far scarier than this. No debates need to be had. None. Alright? It made me pee the bed one time. I experienced my first nightmare, a vision of me. I sat right on a patterned sofa in a dreary room, and to my left sat the figure of a woman who was slumped in on herself. The office-like space was dimly lit by a lamp on the desk to the left of the room, and on the desk were a few scattered documents. Above the desk hangs the if that's a word, that's a stupid word, oblong portrait of a no closer defining male bust. I'm slightly dizzy, but most of all, I'm scared when I see the pain on the face of the blonde, the blonde woman's puckers. I don't know what puckers means. Does that mean lips? It's a very strange description to use when you're speaking about, you know, this event that apparently happened in Felix's nightmares. But, yeah, he either goes on to say, she's already dead. I was hesitant to put the substance in the lipstick-like capsule to ingest, although we should ingest the poison at the same time. Instead, I sat there. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know what he's describing here, seemingly, Felix is having like an Assassin's Creed level flashback. You know when you go into the big machine thing in Assassin's Creed and you kind of step into the past of Ezio Auditore and you're going through the Roman world of, I don't know, 1400s, wherever it was, and you're exploring history. It's kind of like he's done that. But in this case, he's not exploring a heroic Italian assassin. Instead, he is, reliving the moment of where certain awful political terrible leader took their life and their wife took their life. It was a moment that happened in 1945, and Felix, seemingly, according to his memoirs, is reliving this incident at the age of 5 years old. Now, when I was 5 years old, I was watching, you know, like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Sonic X. I think it was out then. Either way, I was watching a lot of anime, and maybe that's a more terrifying thing for a 5-year-old to witness than the things that Felix was apparently witnessing in these visions. But alas, these are apparently the things that Felix saw in his nightmares, and obviously, you could just say he's lying here, he's attention-seeking here, but you could also, you know, have the whole question of, not that this is a real thing, but maybe he was a very disturbed child and had a lot of issues and probably needed to seek a lot of professional help. I think that's, you know, a factor which is probably more likely than the whole reincarnation aspect of things. Because to be honest with you, I don't really think this is how reincarnation works. It's not like when you're apparently reincarnated from something, you then start to have flashbacks throughout your life and you've got to put together the clues like you're in Mystery Inc. and, oh, we've uncovered the mystery. He was at... That's just not how it works, I think. But then after this, the first-person written experiences only continue, and it only gets even more worse. Trembling, I began to question myself, including my decision to self. Was there really nothing left for me in this world? Had I really failed at everything I once set my mind to so passionately? Of course, the answer was quickly clear. For fear of pain after I saw the woman on my left die, I just look up at my... There is me on the coffee table. I pick up by its red pedestal. At this point, listen, all I can do is breathe shakily as I hold the to my right temple. It was very difficult to keep steady against my head with the insane tremor in my hand. But finally, counting to every breath and heartbeat, I subscribed to INAB. Doesn't say that. In fact, if that is an actual flashback that he was having, and this is all a real reincarnation, don't subscribe to me, Felix Cipher. I don't want you here. But if you're new, you could subscribe if you want. But pretty much what he says here is, yeah, he did the thing.
Do the thing.
And he is now remembering this as a 5-year-old child. And I guess this does not back up a story. Like, let's get this straight, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't evidence of everything, but it does kind of coincide with a story that he gave on TikTok, which we went over earlier, of where he basically pointed at a birthmark on his head and said that, oh yeah, this is kind of evidence that I am the reincarnated version of that said terrible human being. And as I previously just said, ladies and gentlemen, I don't really think this is how reincarnation works. And Felix, you mentioned you're not on your medication before. Sonny Jim. I just said Sonny Jim. I'm like the most stereotypical British man in existence. But my good buddy, no, not that. I was going to say, mate, just my, not even acquaintance, just Felix. Just probably go get help and take some medication, because this is just absolutely balmy at this point. And shortly after this, he does actually go on to further elaborate over the whole birthmark part of this story, and just in general his visions from 5 years old. It was only after this nightmare that I started to notice the birthmark on my right temple, right where the thing entered my skull, but I didn't think anything of it at the time. From this day forth, something changed in me. My fears rose to new heights, for I feared death, injuries, and diseases involving insane and paranoid compulsions. Besides, this nightmare woke me up at a young age my interest in violent topics. When I played games, there were death, fighting, and bloody one wounds are a common motif in my stories. Now fellas, when it comes to Felix's stories, he is referring to his literature novels which he has written in the past, the Heroes of Midaria. Emphasis on mid, because nobody blooming read these books. But either way, when it comes to these books, in my opinion, from what I've looked into when it comes to these books, now I have not purchased them, but I have looked as much as I can into them without paying any fees. These books are, yes, fantasy, but a bit of a representation of Felix's own character, personality, and struggles. In fact, I would say they're kind of like some weird autobiography where he's pretty much just put himself into fantasy characters, and we will go into that in the future of this video, but I mainly want to mention that here because of what he mentions here when it comes to stories. He very much is very interested in literature, and I think the reason for that is because that's a place for him to truly emphasize who he is as a human being, but face no consequences because of obviously the whole defense of it being fantasy and fiction. And the thing is, when it comes to Felix using certain things as excuses to get away with certain beliefs, that is a pretty recurring theme throughout this entire story. And in fact, it's mainly one of the main things that I think is the reason to why he is going around saying that he is the reincarnated version of said terrible human being. I think Felix does this because he actually wants to kind of get away with having these beliefs. I genuinely do believe Felix holds these terrible opinions and beliefs as the same beliefs and opinions that that guy in the 1940s had, but I think he believes if he, has this main character storyline, this reincarnation story, that will almost make people feel a little bit more sorry for him. Not everybody, of course. Most people will just hear it and say you're absolutely mental, but some people out there will be like, oh, I don't know, he's troubled or something like that. And Felix can kind of get away with having these mental beliefs. As we've seen in the past, his friends have used the whole mental health aspect to kind of defend him. And the reality is, yes, I think this person is somebody who probably is mentally disturbed and does definitely need professional help, but at the same time, I don't think that papers over the fact that Felix definitely holds the beliefs that he bolsters in his literature, in this whole document, in his TikTok comments, and in his TikToks, and in his Tumblr. I think Felix very much is the person that he presents himself to be as, but obviously there are a lot of techniques, tactics, and excuses that are being implemented here. But then after this, ladies and gentlemen, he kind of further goes into his whole reincarnation story and starts to speak about his developing love for Germany as he was a child. And honestly, I kind of get secondhand embarrassment reading this for German people, because the German people of the modern day didn't do anything to deserve this, and it is honestly just it's honestly just painful to read at this point. About the same age as the nightmare that I had, I began having one of my first big developing passions alongside drawing. Again, it's not exactly a shock that this guy is claiming to be an artist. I fell in love with Germany. I adored the country, the people, the language, and the culture, and at school, I started helping the children on the playground to tell about. I actually don't know what the translation is there, and again, it's probably another very good representation that this person actually does not know the German language, and therefore it's not the reincarnation of you-know-who. But he basically goes on to say that he was on the playground chanting at fellow schoolmates saying, I am German, I am from Germany. And of course, everybody at my age believed. But the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, I think he's kind of trying to play on childhood innocence here by being like, oh, the kids believed me, there was no bias there, they didn't know better, and they could clearly see that I was German. But the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, He was like 7 years old at this point of time in this story that he's telling us. When I was 7 years old, I was playing RuneScape. I was going through the streets of Varrock, and I had somebody go up to me and he said to me, you know what, mate? My dad is Bill Gates, and if you don't give me your RuneScape GPs right now, I'm going to get Bill to hack into your PC. And me being 7 years old, I thought, Jesus, Bill Gates' son is coming after me. You know why I thought that? Because I was 7 years old and I didn't know better. Because 7-year-olds are stupid. Felix, the reason the 7-year-olds are believing you but the 70-year-olds are not believing you is because the 70-year-olds are, well, educated, intelligent, have life experience to know that you are chatting utter bollocks. And I think what makes this even funnier is that at the beginning of this document, Felix was like, I would never say these things without any like factual evidence to back up this conclusion. But his factual evidence so far has been, oh yeah, got a mark on my forehead, and also a 7-year-old once believed me that I'm from Germany. It's not exactly the most compelling pieces of evidence. He then goes on to say, I remember being proud of where I came from and my past for a long time. However, when I first saw my former self and all that I had done at school, I also remember that I had such a strange feeling, and after that, I suddenly stopped to connect to my German side. I tried to run away from her. Anyway, I had strange images and recordings of moments from my past life continued through my head. For example, I had pictures in my mind of all these beautiful mountainous regions with German architecture. One of my favourite memories was walking through the woods of the mountains with my sheepdog Blondie, who walked and I watched the dog playing merrily in the stream. Now, of course, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pretty kind of known fact. Now, I'm not expecting all of you to know this, but it's pretty common knowledge to know that the said bad, terrible leader from the 1940s had a dog, and that dog was called Blondie. And I guess Felix is kind of claiming that he remembers the good old days of him walking this said dog. But I think this kind of leads us into one of the main problems with this document of everything written here is pretty much just common knowledge. Like, you think the guy that's been saying, I'm gonna give you conclusive evidence to prove this absolutely mind-boggling fact, you think that guy would be like, oh, I'm gonna make up some storylines, some things that nobody out there would know, because, you know, all you've presented us so far are things that everybody knows. Yes, there are mountains in Germany. Yes, there is German architecture in Germany. And also, yes, that bloke had a dog called Blondie. But the problem is, Felix, you didn't see these things in a nightmare. You saw them on Wikipedia. But yes, now we are currently at the ending of this reincarnation explanation. Yes, there was absolutely no explanation and he was just reading us facts from Wikipedia. But he kind of then moves into his beliefs after this point. And I think it very much does kind of encapsulate who Felix Cipher is as a person, which I keep saying throughout this because, to be honest with you, everything that we're going through is a representation of this guy because it is his writing. But the only reason I'm saying this is because of what I said before of I don't believe that Felix genuinely believes that he is this guy from the 1940s. I mean, maybe there's a partial belief, but I think the main reason that he may have convinced himself this is to kind of just deal with the fact and put an excuse out there that he does hold these horrific beliefs, which he then gets into in this document. Aside from a wealth of memories, neither my rigid personality nor my abilities haven't changed much since my rebirth. Even before my official discovery, once I noticed my similar thought processes and my ambition to make humanity radical to change. I've always had a vision of a perfect society, even when I was a kid. Now, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, it's absolutely lovely for Felix to just voluntarily put himself on an FBI watch list. I mean, fair play, Felix, you've made the FBI agents' jobs a little bit more easy. Because when he mentioned things like radical changes and perfect societies, these issues and things that he's mentioning here are obviously deep-rooted in bigotry, racism, xenophobia, homophobia, just every form of phobia in the booklet, pretty much. And the reason that he's saying these things isn't because he wants the best for humanity, but it's because he just wants to continuously bolster these horrible beliefs he has through this reincarnation story. The sheer romanticization of the person he's talking about here is simply utterly disgusting, and whilst I don't think he is the reincarnation of him, obviously, I do think, as I said, he follows these political beliefs, which is obviously wild and vile, and begs the question of, why is this guy still allowed on TikTok? But then it only gets worse. A world where people are smarter, healthier, more efficient, and more at pace of progress than today. A world where we treat the environment kindly and the animals gracefully. I long to create a more conscious, intelligent breed of a human being who is more aware of himself and his surroundings. A kind of people who can understand that feelings are important, but only to a certain extent, and that emotions are sometimes for the good of all have to be reset. I don't really think that I need to necessarily explain why these words are absolutely abhorrent and terrible, but I will just say the whole idea of this perfect society that he mentioned, it's just absolutely disgusting given what it's all completely deep-rooted in. And to be honest with you, when it comes to humanity, I think the most beautiful and best part of it is that there are 7 billion people on this earth, and we are all unique. We have our own thought process, our own beliefs, and just things that we do in a day-to-day life. That makes humanity what it is, not being this thing that follows this FELIX CIPHER horrible textbook, but having individuality, having the ability to do things that we really truly want to do. And to be honest with you, it's really no shock to me that FELIX failed art school, because any artist out there worships and appreciates individuality and just in general the beauty of how humanity is so different in all forms of different cultures. And the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, I came into this FELIX CIPHER German memoir trying to understand the reasons to why he has done the things that he has done, the reasons to the things that he says, and an understanding behind him. Because yes, I don't agree with any of it whatsoever, but I think it is good to understand these things so we can prevent them in the future. And honestly, I don't even think that this is necessarily that unique of a case. What I think we have here is somebody who is just in general a bad person, a bellend, somebody that you just don't want to be around. But the problem is when you are a bellend and when people, don't want to be around you, you have to ask yourself the question, do a little bit of self-reflection and say, am I the problem? And I think however you respond to that question is very telling. You could self-reflect and build on the fact that you possibly are the problem, because if everybody doesn't want to associate with you, then usually you are the problem. But with FELIX, he is an example of somebody who didn't want to reflect on himself, didn't want to change anything, and refused to believe that he is the problem and everybody else is actually the problem. And the reason he is the most insane TikToker out there is because he did this and went to the most insane, worst possible extent. Because to defend these horrible beliefs that he had, he has created this reincarnation story as some form of messed up justification behind everything. When the reality is, FELIX, you aren't the reincarnated version of this person. You're just a complete, utter bellend. But ladies and gentlemen, after this, FELIX then goes on to pretty much conclude his memoirs, not with any evidence, nothing at all that's actually going to make this thing somewhat believable. And again, as I said, there was never actually going to be that, but maybe there was some reasoning behind the madness other than him being a complete utter bellend and just having to justify his actions. But let's read this ending statement. Despite all of my recollections in this evidence, there is no evidence, FELIX. We have to reiterate that. There is absolutely no evidence that you've provided us other than, oh, I've got a big old mark on my forehead. There is one physical characteristic that hasn't changed at all since my last life. My eyes. The form, the depth, and colour remain right away, and I've always been told how enchanting my gaze is, this life and the last. Well, to be honest, FELIX, I think it's more people just saying, hey mate, can you leave us alone? Can you just not stare at us? Because I feel like you probably are one of those dodgy people that just go around just staring at people for no apparent reason. I just get Just get the vibe of that, you know? But yeah, he says that his gaze has been enchanting according to people, and what's not changed since his previous life is also his strong relationship with his mother. And in high school, he knew something was wrong with him and his past, and at that time, he was also suffering, going through female puberty, and his male image of himself began to disintegrate. So he started medical conversion to manhood, even though he hated himself for being transgender, which obviously is absolutely just sad to read. I know he's a terrible person here, but there are a lot of deep-rooted issues with this guy, and despite I do think that he is a bellend, I also think that there is a cause and effect which has caused him to be a bellend. And I'm not saying it's because of his identity issues, but I think he has a lot of mental-related issues which have never really been seen to from a professional, and I think throughout this entire memoir you can really get the understanding of that. At the age of 5, he was apparently having these visions and nobody ever attempted to help him, and obviously it led to what it led to. Again, it's not a justification, but I think it is something that we should kind of highlight here and say, Felix, please, for the love of God, just go and get some help. But yeah, he basically goes on to say that he had to be the gender of his past life, and mentions more things about his books, and just in general how he likes to use his writing to rant about his life as a leader, which again plays into the fact that I think his fantasy novels aren't necessarily, well, fiction. And he goes, in summary, my past has shaped me since my childhood. It haunts me through my memories, my looks, the way I speak, my personality, my abilities and weaknesses, and all parallels and ironies in our lives. So yes, fellas, we are now at the ending of the memoir, thankfully, and I genuinely didn't expect it to go on for this long, but there was a lot to go through in this whole thing. It's a complete utter mess, and I hope I haven't come off like I've been justifying or defending anything here. I merely have tried to get to the bottom of absolutely everything in this situation, and I think from this we have really understood who this person is. He holds these absolutely reprehensible, terrible beliefs, and he uses certain things to get away with that and defend those things. Because let's be honest, ladies and gentlemen, if he didn't have this reincarnation story, we probably would have just been like, oh, you're a terrible person, call police, bye bye. Whereas here, with everything that he's done and said, it's attention seeking. It's almost allowing him to somehow get away with these beliefs, which is just absolutely disgusting. It's very clear, in my opinion, that Felix Cipher is a very cruel and manipulative person, and whilst we can base that on his own memoirs, I think another way to base an opinion on somebody and base your just in general knowledge about a certain topic is to base it on personal experiences, and that's where we move away from these memoirs and actually go into the personal relations that Felix Cipher has had with other individuals. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't usually pry into the ins and outs of people's past relationships or even current relationships, but I do think that this is something that we do need to do in this situation to get a further understanding of why, when it comes to Felix, just why. So we need to go and look at FoxLaw242424. They are a TikToker who basically claims to be Felix Cipher's ex. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, if you ever believe that you were completely and utterly forever alone in this eternal hellscape of a universe, don't worry, because there's clearly somebody for absolutely everybody. But yes, Foxlaw over the last few months has pretty much just been documenting via multiple TikToks, detailing their experiences with Felix, and just in general, if they knew about Felix's history or not, and just in general, the ins and outs of their relationship. And naturally, I know what a lot of people are going to be saying here, well, this could obviously be a fake, this could be an attention seeker, and I did think that, so I did even more digging, and I found a comment which was from before the drama even started, which in my opinion pretty much does confirm their relationship. Obviously, as you can see here, it's referring to a relationship between Felix and this TikToker. And there is also this photo, and honestly, all I can say from this is I am sorry that you had to be in this relationship. But let's get into the first account, which is on the 2nd of February 2023, and pretty much it starts off with a TikTok which has text that states, "When your chronic pain is at the worst it's ever been," and a video of your ex claiming to be a mustache man goes viral. And firstly, in the comment section, they confirm that the messages between the family members and the people out there concerned about the Felix situation are absolutely real. And obviously that makes everything even a little bit worse in this situation, given the context of what's happened to Felix's family. But then also a lot of people were saying, well, why would you date Felix Cipher? And did you know about Felix Cipher's beliefs, history, past, whatever you want to call it? And they did make a TikTok addressing this.
So I started dating Felix during my sophomore year of high school. We had met when I was a freshman and he was a senior. And I did not know that he was Kanye West's best friend. But yeah, he was really toxic, and I dated him for 2 years because he emotionally manipulated me into doing so. So yeah, I don't associate with him. He is like severely mentally ill, so
Now, to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, this does kind of line up with a lot of things that I've mentioned throughout this video, mainly the part of Felix being an emotionally manipulative person. Now, obviously, given who Felix claims that he is the reincarnation of, that person was a very emotionally manipulative person. So firstly, we can kind of tick off the box and believe that this story is most likely definitely true, but also I think it then does just play into the thing that I was mentioning earlier of Felix isn't the reincarnation of this person. Felix is just a dick. Like, there's no other explanation here. Felix is a dick and uses these stories as a way to get away with things. And also, I should probably just say, a senior dating a freshman, probably the biggest red flag in this entire situation. But another thing that I think kind of backs up this story of Felix just in general, even behind the scenes of social media being a dick, is backed up in TikToks which were from before the drama, of where you can see that FoxLaw2424 is pretty much just calling Felix a toxic ex, and also they were extremely happy that that toxic ex stopped texting them. So the painting of the picture of Felix Cipher at this point is just further pointing into the direction of, wow, this person is just a very disturbed dickhead, and that only continues with further revelations in this, where Foxlaw continues that they didn't know about this stuff that Felix, had written up, put in the backlogs, and how Felix hid this stuff for a year and a half in their relationship, but Felix then started revealing more and more things about himself and was getting more manipulative. And now, yes, these revelations aren't really anything mind-blowing, given everything that we've gone through. I mean, you didn't really need an ex to come out and be like, oh, this person's a bellend. We already knew this, but some of the revelations after this I'm just going to read this. Not a joke, but the one where he pans to the camera, to the birthmark on his head, and he's like, this is the scar from when I offed myself. And then the ex responds saying, bruh, he made me first touch it when he first told me, and then started crying and calling me Eva. It was weird and creepy. And if you don't know who Eva is, yeah. And again, this does bring in the question of, if Felix was such a terrible and manipulative person, why would you have even stayed with them in the first place? And I will just give an answer to that right here, not just with this situation, but I think when you're in with what seems to be here presented as an abusive relationship, it's difficult to get out of. Even though you know that you shouldn't be in that relationship, it's so much more difficult. Based on some of the TikToks that they had posted and some of the comments that they had made, it was very clear to me that this person was scared of Felix and scared of getting out of this relationship. Comments about being forced into not speaking to other people, and just in general how this relationship was so unbelievably toxic. I can understand why somebody would find it difficult to get out of something like that. But also, we should take into the context here, they did get out of that relationship. They did break up and they did get away from that, and thankfully so. But then 3 months later, with Felix's return, things only get oh so much wilder when we discovered that these two were engaged.
Here's the deal about this. Technically, I wasn't forced, but I was emotionally manipulated. So, I started hanging out with him a lot after my group of friends at that high school kind of went apeshit and abandoned me and, told me never to talk to them again because I was having too many panic attacks and it was making them uncomfortable. Which, I mean, is kind of valid, but you didn't have to be rude about it. Anyways, I stopped going to school. He started hanging out with me every day. After a few months, we started dating. And then after a few months after that, we got engaged. And we dated for about a year and a half, I think. And I broke up with his ass because he was crazy. And I hate him. I hate him so much. I hate that man.
Look, ladies and gentlemen, there is just so much lore in this situation. There is just so many things that have been said, so much things in my mind. I should not know the things that I know about Felix Cipher, and you also should not know this information. This should just be stuff which we do not need to know. But now we do know, and now we know that Felix Cipher was engaged in this relationship. It was an absolutely toxic relationship, and it only confirms some of the beliefs that we were having earlier of Felix just in general being a bad person and using these weird storylines as a justification for his actions. And don't get me wrong, I'm not ignoring the fact that there probably is a lot of mental issues going on here, especially when you look at the comment of where, when they discovered the beliefs that Felix had, it was them reading through a childhood diary of Felix's, and they saw the beliefs and things written in there that we have gone through today. So of course these things do go back a long way in history, but as I said earlier in this video, being mentally unwell doesn't make you go and do all of these things that he has done. It doesn't make you dress up as a you know what, like it doesn't make you do any of these things. So again, it's another case of a poor justification. So right now what I see here is a not very nice person who likes to use all of the excuses in the books to get away with things, and we've only seen that from the leaked messages, his personal experiences, and also his friends' defenses of him. But ladies and gentlemen, you probably guessed it. It doesn't end there, because it's all well and good reading these posts and coming to our own conclusions, but I thought I'd do my due diligence after reading a few comments and having a few requests to do this, and I actually reached out to Foxlaw themselves. So I sent a message saying, "Hello, sorry if this sounds rude, but I'm working on a Felix Cipher deep dive video, and I was wondering if you'd be down to answer a few questions about him." And they pretty much responded within an hour saying, yeah, they're absolutely down to have some form of an interview here. And firstly, I would just like to say thank you so much to Foxlaw for participating in this, because to be honest with you, getting first-hand experience is something that we really do need in this situation. With Felix Cipher, there is so much information out there on the internet, but ultimately, first-hand experience of a human being is obviously the most vital form of experience to build an opinion on somebody. And ladies and gentlemen, Foxlaw came with a lot of information, which pretty much does, make everything that we've been saying in this video even more valid. But I would also like to say, Foxlaw themselves is an aspiring musician, and if you want to go and check out their TikTok profile, you can. The link is in the description. And once again, thank you to Foxlaw for, participating in this interview. So firstly, I asked him the simple question of how long have you known Felix for, and have they always been a little bit weird? Obviously, he's more than weird now, but in terms of the past, has he always had strange interests? And by certain interests, I don't mean supporting terrible political ideologies, I mean just in general, weird behavior, red flags here and there. And obviously the red flag is the senior freshman thing. That's obviously not good, but anything else? And they replied saying they've known Felix since he was 14, so about 5 years now, and how Felix has always been weird. Felix was the kid who'd been alone at the back of the classroom pretty much, with his head down, just drawing weird pieces of art. They also said that he was an outcast, as in Foxlaw, so they started hanging out, and pretty much Felix became weirdly clingy and possessive, and Foxlaw at the time was 14 years old, so red flags just look like flags. And I don't know the exact age Felix would be at this point of time. Based on the fact that he was a senior then, I think it would be like at least a few years, and that would kind of link up with some of the things that he was saying in his German memoirs, when he used the whole example of 7-year-olds believing him on the playground, and for some reason that's some form of valid evidence to back up all the things that he's been saying. It's absolutely not, but it's clear that Felix likes to use people who aren't exactly emotionally experienced when it comes to life. Because let's be real here, ladies and gentlemen, if he was to say this to an adult, they're probably going to say, mate, you are absolutely mental, and I think you need to go and get some help. And I do think it also kind of links up with what I was saying earlier of Felix being that outcast, that person who wasn't necessarily, I guess, liked in terms of being in school and social groups. Now, I'm not saying everybody who isn't liked and isn't an outcast is a terrible person? Obviously not, but a lot of outcasts do end up being, you know, terrible people. Not a lot, but some do, because it's just a thing that happens. There's a reason some people are outcasts. Again, not absolutely everybody, but in some cases, you know, there is reasons. And then after this, I went on to ask questions about the diary, because as I mentioned earlier, Foxlaw claimed that the moment they realized all of these terrible things about Felix was when they looked into the diaries of Felix Cipher from his childhood. So I said to them, well, what was actually in these diaries? And they responded saying pretty much they don't really remember, but it was more ramblings about dreams and the memory that we went over earlier, and just in general issues to do with anger. And I followed up with that saying, do you believe that Felix genuinely believes that he is the reincarnated version of you-know-who? And Foxlaw said, yes, he genuinely believes it, and I think it's some form of manifestation of his self-hatred and violent suicidal thoughts. It's terrifying. And to be honest with you, I think this is actually a really good point that they've made here, especially with some of the things that we're going to go into in the future of this video. A manifestation created by self-hatred, just loathing in general, is a real possibility here. So maybe Felix actually does, you know, believe this. Obviously, it's not a real thing, but maybe there is some, I don't know, mental thing going on here. It's quite plausible, to be honest with you, and when you're reading this, you only kind of back up that theory. Again, though, it's no justification for his actions, because let's be real, a lot of people out there have self-hatred and self-loathing, but it doesn't lead them to do these what is absolutely insane things, and I have to reiterate, absolutely god-awful, terrible, insane things. And then in the next question, I asked about Felix's beliefs, and if Felix ever tried to place these beliefs onto Foxlaw themselves, and they said that Felix never tried to force him into these political beliefs, but Felix would rant about these things, and just in general did also make him question over whether he was Eva's reincarnation or not. And at this point, I'm starting to kind of think that, yes, there is this self-hatred manifestation thing here, but there is also probably some freakish obsession when it comes to these people from the past, because we'll also go into a thing of where Felix genuinely also believes that his own mother is the reincarnation of the mother of said terrible Austrian leader from the 1940s. It's like he's trying to basically place every, terrible person from that time in this person's life into a family member or a friend that he has in the modern day, when the reality is this is obviously just a very disturbed person that can't deal with the fact that he has a lot of issues. Or then again, he could just be an attention seeker, and if you want to go down that route, honestly, I completely understand. But then after this, I went on to ask the question about pretty much how long has this been going on for, because we've been pretty much trying to work this out throughout this video. At this point of time, we're kind of at the belief that Felix seems to have had these beliefs, or at least playing this character, since he was 5 years old, and in fact, Foxlaw confirms the exact same thing, saying that Felix also confirmed this to them, saying that this has been going on since Felix was 5. And ladies and gentlemen, if there's any take we can make from this, it's even 5-year-olds should be entitled to some form of therapy. So then I followed that up saying, well, is Felix still, a part of that ideology from the 1930s and 40s? Because in his comeback, he was still adamant about his reincarnation, but do you believe that he still holds those certain views? Because you never know, maybe Felix just thinks that he's this person from that time period, but maybe he is gone on to change his views, especially with everything that happened in February. Maybe since then there has been some change. Obviously, me and you know that's absolutely not the case, but maybe there's some personal experiences that can possibly push us into that direction. Hint, that's not going to be the case. I have no idea what his current views are. When I was dating him, he actually showed no distaste towards Jewish people, and in fact, he celebrated Hanukkah with his family. He mostly just hates neurotypical people, as well as people who he has personal vendettas against. He believes in a word that I can't say, but we'll have to use Eugene from The Walking Dead, and then apply X to the end of that lovely name Eugene. That's what Felix Cipher apparently believes in. And having personal vendettas which leads to you hating people based on their characteristics is obviously a trait very similar to a certain man from the 1940s, but also believing in that specific thing to do with Eugene from The Walking Dead, Again, it kind of paints the picture that, yeah, Felix Cipher very much does just hold these views, and there is absolutely no coming back from this, because I know throughout this video, I've been speaking about reasonings and explanations, but just understand, that's not me coming from a defensive point of view here, that's me just trying to understand how we got here. And I understand that I keep on repeating that, but it's because the internet is an absolute mess, and sometimes if you don't preface something, you're going to get some person in the comments section being like, oh, you're defending him. It's like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm just trying to give some explanation and reasoning, because this guy is absolutely mental, and sometimes there has to be some logical answering, right? Well, maybe not in every situation. But then after this, I go on to ask about their actual relationship, and the answer I got is pretty much just very depressing and only paints a even worse picture of Felix Cipher. They pretty much just go on to say that it was an abusive relationship, and just in general, how Felix is an absolutely terrible person. I mean, it's just a hard read, and I really have nothing but my thoughts and feelings to Foxlaw. I do hope that they're okay now, and based on the fact that they're outside of this relationship, I can imagine that they are in a better space. And just in general, they go on to explain how they are no longer in contact with Felix at all, and honestly, the whole thing is just very sad to see, because it's clear that Felix's friends and family have been affected by his personal actions, and obviously, just because he's a bad person doesn't necessarily mean that every person who was in his life is. Of course, there are people that do defend this guy that he knows in real life, but that doesn't necessarily mean everybody in his life is doing that. And I want to personally thank Foxlaw for answering these questions and just giving me permission to use them in this video, because I feel that these questions have really allowed us to get a further understanding of who Felix Cipher actually is. But ladies and gentlemen, there is also one question that I have left out here, because I did ask this person 10 different questions, and the 10th question was about Felix Cipher's is his alleged love for eggs. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to leave that question and answer until the ending of this video, because I haven't actually explained to you what the whole egg theory is yet, and I think it's best to keep that to the ending, because to be honest with you, I don't want to make you be put off your dinner or whatever you're eating right now. Perhaps it's 3 AM and you are eating some food which is making you feel incredibly guilty, and if it is, well, good. But yes, overall, I think we've got a much better understanding of the true ordeal of the Felix Cipher cinematic universe and how truly deep this goes. This is far bigger than I actually expected it to go, and I think people on social media genuinely don't even know about 75% of the things that we've actually gone through today. And to be honest with you, I don't think any human being out there really needs to know this information, but congratulations, you now know all of this stupid. But ladies and gentlemen, and yes, I am aware I have said but ladies and gentlemen about 4,000 times in this video, but ladies and gentlemen, now we've gotten through the personal connections of Felix Cipher, I think it's time we go back into his own actions. And right... Sorry about... And right now, we have gone through pretty much all of the major things that everybody knows about, but now we need to start going through the archives. Because as I said, I've been like Neo, pretty much just going through the Matrix, trying to just break into every hidden and deleted webpage out there. And of course, that first leads us into the most I can't speak English, into the worst place on planet Earth. No human being should ever be forced into going into this place. This is where the true lowest of the low hang out. This is where people fester in the worst possible ways. Just in general, this place is a pit of hell, darkness, and misery. And of course, I'm talking about TUMBLR. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Felix Cipher's TUMBLR is once again another archive, just everything that makes this man so incredibly insane. But this time, Felix hasn't gone under the pseudonym of Felix Cipher, but actually, he's gone under the name of Hissing Wolf. And pretty much, this TUMBLR is just everything that his TikTok was, but just oh so much unbelievably worse. Like, ladies and gentlemen, it's not like he was even being subtle. He wasn't being subtle whatsoever on the TUMBLR. In fact, I feel like when you say somebody's gone mask off, that's not even like a good phrase here. It's just like he's written his own ideology and just slapped it onto this first Tumblr post. I genuinely don't really understand why he did this, because as I said, usually people are a bit more coy with their beliefs, but FELIX CIPHER, I think he genuinely just is so insane that at this point, he probably doesn't even care what people think. Because, ladies and gentlemen, his face is attached to this, and I'm just like, mate, you do know that there is a thing called a digital footprint, right? But funnily enough, his first post on this account is actually quite wholesome, but at the same time, a little bit ironic. Hi there, to make a long story short, I'm writing a fantasy book series called Heroes of Medaria. Help support me, a young LGBT author. Now, honestly, it is a little bit strange to me that this guy is using the LGBTQ+ community to kind of like bolster his book works. Usually I would say, oh yeah, if you're in the LGBTQ+ community, go ahead, say these things that, you know, is going to get more people interested, because naturally a lot of LGBTQ+ people want to read books from LGBTQ+ authors. But in this situation, this is a bloke that subscribes to ideologies which really don't back the LGBTQ+ community. When I say don't back, I can't really describe their opinions on this community that I am a part of, because it would get me banned from YouTube. But yeah, it's a bit of an ironic start, but he goes on to say that you can go and purchase his book 1, Heaven and Demons, join Dacriton, a half-demon, half-angel hybrid, which honestly, again, kind of somewhat represents his whole political ideology, because as you can see, he's got a character which is like a splice between two different things, and I'm not going to go into specifics here, but if you understand Felix's political ideology, you can kind of get where I'm hinting to there, and why that, again, kind of shows that his literature is more of just him shoving in his political beliefs into these books. And look, I also completely understand if you think I'm reaching when I say that. Yeah, that's completely fair. You could also just say, oh, maybe there's somebody being half demon, half angel as a representation of this guy fighting his demons. I don't really think it is that, purely based on the fact that this guy is clearly pretty adamant about his beliefs, but maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You'll see later in this video about why I think these things about his book. And then he goes on to say, go on a thrilling journey through the magical world of the Middle Realms, which definitely is not a rip on the biggest fantasy world in the history, I can't even speak English, in the history of English literature. It's definitely not a copy of Middle Earth. And then, yeah, he goes on to say, discover his purpose and what, I don't know, I don't even care at this point. I'm never going to read these books in my entire life. But yes, this is obviously, I guess, a little bit of a wholesome introduction. It is just him showing his books. And yes, there are some red flags, but the reason I'm not really going to focus on this right now is because when you go further down the timeline of what he has posted on his Tumblr, well, you can just kind of ignore the first post and see that actually as a golden, wonderful, beautiful post in comparison to everything that we're now going to get into. So in his first post, Felix goes on to confirm that he is once again writing a book, but a book which isn't a fantasy literature novel, but in fact is, I guess, the sequel to a book which was written by a bunch of terrible people from the 1940s, which was a representation of their ideology. Now again, I'm not going to say what the name of this book was, but you can kind of understand what the book was just based on what I just said. And most of you, if you know your history, which you probably should, because this is very important stuff, should know what book I am referring to here. And it does seem that, yes, Felix is writing his own rendition and modern version of this book, which obviously is absolutely disgusting and vile, and again just shows that there is no way of justifying this man's actions. He is just an absolutely horrible person, and it also confuses me why his friends even tried to defend him in the first place. And if you continue to scroll through all of these posts, it is pretty much just people hating on Felix, and people just confirming more and more things about his life. For example, his mother actually does know about his beliefs, but also he quite obviously shares hatred for trans people, with statements such as, trans people nowadays aren't just trans, but they are just people who have depression. And then he also comes after non-binary people, merely stating that it is a fad. Now, to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, I don't really think this is much of a shock. In fact, this is probably the least shocking thing on his entire Tumblr, and obviously all I can really say here is it is disgusting, but at the end of the day, I can't just keep going on long rambling rants into why these things are disgusting when I've done it about 50 times in this video so far. All all I can really say here is this is once again another representation of who this guy is and what he stands for, even in the modern day, and that is coming off the belief that he possibly is the reincarnation, which he obviously isn't. But even if he was, it's clear that he's not checked. I shouldn't even be contemplating that. But then there is a more hilarious note here when it actually comes to that reincarnation story, because Felix pretty much goes on to say that, as I mentioned earlier, that he believes that his mother is the reincarnation of the mother of that said terrible person from the 1940s. And I feel like I once again have to kind of reiterate, and I also have to say that I am again sorry for repeating myself, but again I have to say I'm sorry for repeating the fact that I'm apologizing for repeating myself, and I am kind of losing my mind here, but I should reiterate, that's not how reincarnation works! I think he's taken that one quote from Avatar about how friendships transcend lifetimes a little bit too seriously. Like, it's not like when you die, you say to your brother or sister, or even your mum and your dad, you be like, alright, I'll see you in like 4 weeks, mate, when we're all reborn as Shiba Inus. Like, it's not how it really works. Like, reincarnation, I'm pretty sure the whole belief is you are born into another thing, and that thing goes on to have another life. But that does not necessarily mean that everybody in your life is the same people from your life before. I feel like I'm going absolutely insane even having to explain this, and I really don't even think I should be doing it, because I just feel like I'm, at the end of the day, just entertaining Felix Cypher's utter shithousery. But alas, and why do I keep saying alas? Let's move on into the next posts, because there are plenty more out there. I don't really think I need to go through and read every single one, but they are just clear representations of that his views have not changed since... Again, I'm saying the views haven't changed since the 1940s, but I'm saying that he pretty much does share the exact same views as that person from the 1940s. But I think if there is another thing that we can kind of take from this Tumblr, is that a lot of it does actually link up with some of the things that I spoke to about with Felix Cypher's ex, because obviously in those messages, they said that they do believe that Felix Cypher genuinely believes that he is the reincarnation because of a manifestation based on self-loathing and self-hatred. And looking at this Tumblr, there is a lot of self-hatred on there, in particular with trans-related issues. As we've seen throughout this video, Felix regularly speaks about how much he dislikes the trans ideology. He very much is against that community and very much just stamps on the people who also are trans, and I feel like this is a very good representation of the self-hatred that is inside this man's brain. But again, any other trans person out there would say to you, including my editor who is literally editing this video right now, that this is no justification for his actions. And I think the worrying part about this story when it comes to Felix Cypher is people will see this and just use this to hate on other trans people, because that is what transphobic people do. They'll hear one storyline of where a specific trans person did something dodgy, which isn't even in relation to them being trans, because why would it be? That's just your gender identity, and they will take that and use that as a way to hate on all the trans people out there in the world, which is just obviously absolutely stupid. I mean, put it into like perspective like this, right? Say you support a sports team and somebody in your club that you support, a fan of that club, goes and murders somebody, yeah? You don't then go around and say, oh, everybody that supports this club is a murderer, because that is obviously absolutely stupid. And you may say to me, well, Fraser, it's a little bit different because that's just a sports club. I mean, is it very different? What does your gender have to do with anything with this guy's actions and opinions? Everything that this man has said has nothing to do with trans people. So please, for the love of God, do not take this story and use this as a way to shit on trans people, because if you do that, please leave this channel, click off the video right now, dislike it if you want, I genuinely don't care, but I do think I should put this note here to say, do not use this situation as a way to hate trans people, because I know a lot of people out there will do that, because sadly in 2023, we are living in a world where it's honestly becoming even more increasingly common to hate on trans people and be celebrated for doing so. Well, on this channel, I want to say this is a safe space for trans people. I mean, I'd like to say so. Obviously, I'm not trans and I can't claim that, but I'd like to believe it is. So yeah, I just thought I'd say that. And another thing in terms of Felix's origin story that I discovered whilst going through Felix's Tumblr is actually the first ever bit of controversy Felix Cipher was publicly in. Because as you can see from this post here, it says, "Hey, sorry to tell you, but Hissing Wolf is a TERF. Look at Hissing Wolf's likes." And as you can see, they reply saying, "Thank you so much, /serious/pause. I didn't look closely at all." And now, I can't go and find Hissing Wolf's likes, but based on everything, you can kind of guess that Felix was liking a lot of absolutely abhorrent things, and this post is seemingly the first ever origin of Felix in some form of public controversy, and this post was actually made in 2022. And then another post in 2022 says, "Hey, I don't know if you saw Hissing Wolf's reply, but they've tried to say that they're not a TERF whilst also spewing TERF ideology," and then said, "I hiss in your general direction," and they basically thanked this person for telling them, and just in general, this, I guess, is another case of Felix Cipher getting in more controversy. And then somebody else follows that up saying, "Hissing Wolf isn't a TERF, but he's actually a, well, you don't know what this says, but it's basically the ideology that Felix is oh so public about being a part of." And it very much does just seem that shortly after this, Felix was then bullied off of Tumblr, which is honestly quite hilarious. Like, Felix has been pretty much bullied off every single social media platform at this point. And yeah, I know bullying isn't a great thing, and obviously for YouTube TOS reasons, I have to say that I'm not advocating for bullying, but sometimes bullying can teach, it can teach some lessons. And I think in this situation, it is certainly teaching the lesson that Felix Cipher is an absolute nutjob, but it doesn't end there with this original controversy in late 2022, because as I've briefly shown throughout this video, there were also some leaked DMs, and in these messages, you can clearly see Felix Cipher is bringing up, I guess, things to do with trans, as he says, ideology and stuff like that, and it's very clear that this person has a lot of self-hatred, and just in general, it's quite shocking to read. And not shocking because, oh my god, I can't believe Felix Cipher holds hateful beliefs, but it's just shocking that a human being would self-report themselves as many times as Felix Cipher has. But I also have to say, whilst doing the research for this video, this has no relevance to Felix, but whilst doing the research of his Tumblr, Tumblr is an absolutely horrible website to navigate. I've been like clicking on things without actually knowing what it is, and it just takes me to some other thing, and I don't really know why Tumblr lays out their website so poorly, but I thought I'd just throw in a little complaint there. But yeah, there are so many more posts that we could go through when it comes to the hidden archives of this man's Tumblr, but honestly, I don't really think there's a need to, because the main reason I wanted to take a look at this Tumblr is to kind of see his self-hatred and get a further answer and reasoning to why we are at where we are in the Felix Cipher cinematic universe. But then we need to move on to Felix's literature, because yes, on this hellscape of a Tumblr page, he regularly refers to these books, and throughout this video, I have been referring to these books. And the thing is with these literature pieces from Felix Cipher is it leads into an even bigger rabbit hole that I didn't even think existed before I started this video, such as hidden secret languages created by Felix, and just so much more horrible stuff. So yes, let's get into the books of Felix Cipher. Now, I feel like if there's anybody that should be incredibly thankful for this situation that we're about to go into is actually J.K. Rowling, because congratulations, J.K., you're no longer the most controversial author of the moment, because Felix Cipher has come and taken that title with 3 very controversial novels. So basically, when you do a bit of digging, you can find Felix Cipher's Google profile on Google Books, and as you can see, you have these 3 novels: Hero of Medaria, Heaven's Demons, Angels of Hell, and The Secret Diary. And I think the most fascinating thing about these publications is that word that I just said. These books are actually published. These books, you can buy them on a hardback, and they can be delivered to your house. There is people making these books in factories. It's quite a fascinating thing that anybody can actually get a book published. I mean, I feel like I need to start scamming my audience and selling you guys books which are really badly, poorly ghost written by some poor soul out there and just slap my name onto it. Maybe I should do that. But yeah, you can go to multiple places right now and buy the Heroes of Madaria series, which I believe currently has 2 books in, and this is meant to be a trilogy, although maybe this one is actually the end of the trilogy. I'm not really too sure, and honestly, I don't actually care to clarify. Now, whether these books are good or bad, we will, I guess, kind of go through the reviews later on, but the main reason I want to speak about these actual novels is because of what I just said previously before going into this chapter, that these books are pretty much just a representation of Felix's character. Now, this is something that a lot of authors out there like to do. They like to put themselves into their stories. I mentioned J.K. Rowling previously, and she actually is an example of an author that has done this. Throughout the production of Harry Potter, I believe J.K. Rowling has said that she always has seen herself as Hermione, which I can't really see that personally, but, you know, I'm just going to use this as an example. And, you know, Stephen King sees himself as Pennywise. No, he doesn't. Or maybe he should. He's a bit of a weird Donny he is. But, you know, this is a thing that a lot of authors out there like to do. George R. Martin, it's Tyrion. Again, no, but, you know, that this is a thing. So what I want to do is go through the descriptions of these 3 books, because even in the descriptions, without reading them, you can get an understanding of how Felix has put himself into these books. And we're going to start off with the first novel in the Heroes of Madaria series, Heaven's Demons. In the strange and magical world of the Middle Realms, which is definitely not something that I've recently received a copyright strike for from the Tolkien family, there are many diverse races of people that inhabit the lands. Humans, elves, dwarfs, and many civil creatures thrive on this planet. However, the different races are often viewed on a spectrum, and at the very ends of it, there are seraphs and demons, one exalted and one feared. It is often taught that a person can be only good or bad, and that anything between isn't really relevant or real. Every race in the middle of the spectrum always strives to be like the angels, who are said to be pure-hearted and loving. Unfortunately, what people know about these beings almost always simply comes from what they have been taught or what they have read, rather than based off experience. And now, instantly going into this description, you can see that he has already started to speak about the whole subject of race. This is clearly, I mean, it's so obviously to do with his political ideology, because that's what his ideology mainly focuses on, and he has so obviously written a fantasy novel about race, ideal, I don't even know how to describe this, just a load of shit, to be honest with you. And yeah, let's continue and see what Felix has got cooking. Who let this man cook? It wasn't easy for Dacratrin, who grew up in a very comfortable spot his whole life. Being a crossbreed of angel and a demon wasn't something that was welcomed in the world, especially since it is forbidden. And this kind of goes into what I was mentioning earlier, with combinations and splicings of certain things together to create a thing. It again plays into that ideology that he subscribes. You know, again, I'm not going to say what this is, but you can kind of get an understanding based on something that Zek said earlier in my interview with them. As you can see throughout this video, the pieces are just all adding up together, and it is all kind of culminating in his fantasy novels, where it is just so obvious what is going on here. But let's continue, where he basically speaks about this angel and how it's forbidden for them to be a half-breed, and after a lonely childhood of growing up strange and outcasted with the seraphs, it is finally time for Daki's life to change when he is banished from the Highlands after a public fight with his stepbrother that turns nasty. And honestly, if there's one thing that I've noticed about this description that Felix has written, it's like the description is actually bad. He has written a 300-page novel, and I don't claim to be a master of the English language, but ladies and gentlemen, I've not gone and read a book, and also, I actually think I have dyslexia. My dad has it, and I don't know if that's like a genetic thing, but I'm just really bad with words, basically. And I actually do want to be an author. It was the job that I originally wanted to do when I was younger. I have always had a passion for writing stories. And I don't know why I'm telling you this. It's just like, oh, now he's a YouTuber, how sad. But either way, what I'm trying to say here is that the writing itself is just really bad. But again, it's kind of reflective of Felix's life. The whole mentioning of an outcast cast out from society. Once again, it very much feels like Felix is putting himself into this story. He's this half angel and half demon, and he's gonna save the world and prove that everybody's current beliefs of how society should be is wrong. This is how insane this guy is. Rather than just accepting that, oh, maybe my personal beliefs are a little bit skewed in comparison to the rest of the world, no, he's gonna write a book series explaining why he is right in fantasy terms. He says that the Daki bloke no longer lives with the angels, and the world below proves itself to be just as cruel, and then, oh god, I just don't care. And homelessness soon leaves himself feeling defeated, and maybe that's kind of referring to himself again, because, you know, he has lost his job, and I imagine he can't pay for his bills. But he just goes on to say that, yeah, half-demon's life kind of sucks, and is there really a place for such a horrible creature like him in the world? And you know, Felix, you can just say, mate, this is basically your autobiography. Like, you don't need to hide this from us. We understand what this is. We know what you're doing here. The whole Hermione Granger tactic, the Pennywise Stephen King tactic, we know what this is, mate. You can just put the label on it if you really want to. But yeah, that is the full description. So let's move on to the next sequel, I guess, which is Angels of Hell. And the description here is much shorter, thankfully. And I'm just going to read you it, but pretty much it is more of the same. Finding themselves stranded, partners Dactrin and Leviathan struggle to make their way back home from what inexplicitly happened to them back in the Elven village. However, as time progresses, what starts off as a seemingly sporadic event of misfortune quickly proves to be something far deeper and more intricate than either of them could have imagined. Well, it's the most generic fantasy plot of all time. Growing mystery shrouds the recent turn of events, and as many inexplicable things begin to arise, the uncertainty spreads, and so does the threat that lies before them all. Now, yes, ladies and gentlemen, there isn't as much detail as there was in the first one there, but there is actually something that I did notice after doing a little bit of research into this one description, and I kind of found out that pretty much Leviathan, sorry if this is mispronounced, and this is why I apologize, is pretty much a sea serpent who is apparently a metaphor for powerful enemies in, I guess, Jewish literature. And I guess this is kind of strange, but also plays into what his ex was saying earlier of, despite all of the things that he says and the ideologies that he subscribes to, he still does weirdly kind of like indoctrinate himself into, I guess, Jewish culture, which is really weird considering, you know, everything that he claims to be. And I guess it does come back to that whole self-hatred aspect that is now manifested into what he has become right now. But yes, my brothers, sisters, and sisters, we now need to move on to the next part of the FELIX CIPHER cinematic book universe, which is The Secret's Diary. And this one obviously is a little bit on the nose in comparison to the other one, and it kind of feels like Felix has taken my advice here, and rather than just describing this as a fantasy novel, it's just a diary. And the description reads, having grown up with no one, outcasted because of his mental and physical abnormality. I mean, again, it's very instantaneously thinking, oh, this is just completely and utterly about FELIX CIPHER himself. He's not even being, he's just going straight into it. I mean, I'd say I respect it, but I don't. Jackie Crotal, that's a terrible name, lived in a sheltered life with just his mum and father. I mean, okay, you just have your mother and father. Some of us don't have any of them. Lived a sheltered life with his mum and dad. Renowned scientist Ivan Crotal, Jesus, these names are weird, rejected him as a son when he didn't live up to the man's standards. However, after Jackie's mum dies, the nymph is what? Is that the right word you want to use there? I don't think that's the correct word to use describing your own mother, but we'll continue. And is later thrown into his abusive father's hands, to where he is locked away and tortured in the depths of Ivan's research center. How is this just the plot of like Stranger Things? I feel like I'm reading the plot to Stranger Things right now. Have you stolen the plot to Stranger Things? Because I think you've done that. Jackie soon discovers for the first... Okay, I guess there's... Jackie is a different... Well, I honestly, I have no idea what I'm reading right now. This is just so bad. The secret to his father's biggest project was revealed to him, and such an unlikely connection would only lead Jackie to a strange new world of freedom, but it would also alter the history of everything for eternity. Oh wow, this is, again, another incredibly generic fantasy story. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm somebody that is an absolute sucker for fantasy stories. I have pretty much gotten into every major cinematic fantasy universe out there, but even this is making me want to fall asleep. But obviously, we know the whole point isn't about quality here. It is just Felix putting his, I guess, feelings and life stories into fantasy literature. Now, whether that is some form of coping mechanism or is just some form of way to get his feelings out there without people judging him, I'm not really sure, but I guess it is more of a coping mechanism considering that Felix isn't really shy with showing his beliefs and thoughts out there in the world. And maybe he did just want to make money off his beliefs and turn it into some form of fictional universe that he thought maybe HBO would pick up. But ladies and gentlemen, I can confirm HBO currently, well, I say they're not desperate, but they are currently, again, we're speaking about Harry Potter earlier, they are rebooting Harry Potter, which reeks of utter desperation and such a lack of creativity and kind of exemplifies where we are at in terms of creativity in the media industry. But they're not at the point of giving Heroes of Madeira or The Secret Diary a TV show yet. I have to say. But with this, of course, I went and looked at the reviews, and pretty much as you can see on Amazon, it's just people being like, yeah, this guy is an absolute dickhead, please do not buy this book. Oh my god, this guy is that, he's bad, just do not read this book. And honestly, my main question, I just said mine. I'm turning into the bird from Finding Nemo. I'm losing my mind, by the way. I've done so many recordings to this video. This is a long video, and I am actually starting to go loopy. But the question is why is this actually still on Amazon, available for purchase right now? I believe this is even on Amazon Prime. So if I was to buy this book, it would be at my doorstep at 9 a.m. tomorrow, and by 9:01, I would be in a ditch. I can't say that, but either way, I would give the book a very bad review. But yeah, I think I've kind of exemplified my point here of why I wanted to look at these novels, because it is just yet again another representation of Felix Cipher. And as you've kind of noticed, the rabbit hole only does continuously get deeper and deeper with this person. I honestly didn't expect it to continuously go this deep, but the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, you better believe it, it's not over there, because I started to do even more research, and I went on to the Heroes of Madeira blog way back in February when the whole Felix Cipher situation was blown up, and I kind of saw some posts on there about the book series. But what kind of piqued my interest recently is that website no longer exists. It's been wiped from the Jedi archives. The Sith came along and they deleted that shit like they deleted Camino, and honestly, I was confused by this. I thought, well, he's not really somebody that seems to be shy from posting his beliefs and stuff out there. Why would he delete his website? And honestly, all I can conclude from this is, you know, the ISP probably were like, yeah, we don't want to host this guy's website anymore, and they probably deleted it themselves. But I wanted to go onto this website and take another gander at it, because there was one thing that I noticed a few months back, and that was Felix Cipher, as I've mentioned throughout this video, has curated and formulated a language. So this document is currently only available on the Internet Archives. God bless their souls, please can they stay a thing. And as you can see, it is just a load of mumbo jumbo, one of the things. It's basically just a bunch of gibberish, and I was just confused. What does this actually mean? So I did do some research in February and again today, and yeah, this is Felix Cipher's own language, which I believe he has developed for his fantasy stories. And in this one, I think it is particularly for The Secret Diary. And I think the context is here. I guess in the novel, the person who wrote the diary didn't want everybody reading this and taking in the information about whatever they were writing in the diary. So Felix kind of took it upon himself to create his own language. Now, you could say that, oh, that's a very creative thing to do, and it's something that a lot of fantasy authors out there like to do. Or you could say, oh, maybe this is actually some terrifying thing which is now being used in the cult of Felix Cipher. And one thing that does specially point to that is a little bit of a theory, which honestly I think has a lot of merit given everything, that Madeira, or even Madaria, is a name which is very closely attached to a certain thing that Felix prescribes to, that I'm not going to say the word, but you've got Arya Stark, and basically, you kind of combine that with an un, and pretty much people are saying that Midoriya is meant to be, you know, I guess just the fictional representation of said suck. Sorry, I'm really trying to get around this stuff.
Fine.
And the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, I don't really have the intelligence or time to decipher what this language means, and I was going to kind of leave it there and just show you it as it is, but I did find out that somebody on TikTok did actually have the brains, have the time, and have the mindset to actually manage to decipher this language. So this TikToker Snowbunny pretty much took it upon themselves to break down the code and language, and they used other scriptures written by Felix to pretty much work out this language, and they spent so much time just trying to develop, I guess, a translator to work out what was actually being said on this page and other pages which contained Felix's hidden language. So I think all we can do here is take a look into this person's beginning of the investigation.
Hey puzzlers, code breakers, and decipherers. I'm tired. And I wish I could just say, I cracked the code, but it's not that easy. But I thought I would share what I have in case there are other people who are also working on this. It's kind of an enigma, you might say. Yeah, so here's what I have so far. Okay, I read through the first free sample that he had online, and I wrote down reoccurring words, things that seemed important. And then I started writing down the symbols in patterns that I recognized. So if I saw it more than once, I wrote it down. This one I saw a lot. I also saw these two a lot. Then I wrote down all of the words that I could find that had repeating letters. And that's where the dog whistles came in, right there in the middle. Those are the two that I know about, if there are others. Then I wrote down all of the word patterns that have double letters. This is the document that I've been studying to pick out all these symbols.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, to create a language is obviously something that a lot of authors do in their fantasy stories, but with Felix's stories, of course, they're not just necessarily ingrained in fiction. As we've worked out through descriptions and through everything else in this video, these stories do contain a lot of his beliefs from non-fiction. He inserts himself into this as a way to demonstrate his beliefs in a fantasy world, as I've said a million times now, but the thing is, I think having a secret language very much matches up with all of this, because he obviously bangs on about a perfect society, wanting things to be amazing and the way he personally wants it via his own ideology, and I think language is a massive part of that, because having different languages around the world is a massive part of multiculturalism, and I think Felix Cipher really doesn't like the idea of multiculturalism, especially based on the ideologies that he likes to attach himself to. So creating this own language honestly makes me think there is more sinister stuff behind this. Yes, you could just look at it at face value and say it's a creative thing to do for his story, but in my opinion, based on everything we know about these fantasy stories, I think there is something more sinister going on here. But to actually get back into understanding what this language actually means, Snowbunny pretty much kind of tried to decipher, no pun intended, everything in this language by analyzing certain frequencies and also symbols used throughout all of Felix's literature.
Y'all, my heart is racing. I just spent all afternoon transcribing the first page of the TikTok where Felix shows his secret language, and all the colors are me notating the frequency in which that symbol occurred.
My heart is racing. I don't have every letter solved, but I think I've cracked it.
Here are words that I saw occur frequently, and then these are words that had double letters, and these are words that have apostrophes. This word immediately and this word regardless were like my in. This one was a scary one to sort out.
Like I said, I don't have everything sorted out yet, but I think I have made a breakthrough.
2 seconds later.
I've done it. I've cracked his code. I've cracked his language. Here is the alphabet with some spelling notations. I haven't encountered a word that included X, so that's one symbol that I haven't sussed out yet. But you now have the tools. You have the same tools that I have to decipher anything that he has in this type of writing. Remember this? That part of this. This is from his website, and this is what I've translated.
Now, firstly, my friends, can we just appreciate how much detail and time has been put into deciphering this language? I could, take their TikTok and reword what they're saying and say it to you all without playing their TikTok. But firstly, I would feel bad by doing that. I feel like this person deserves the credit for all of the time and effort that they've put into actually going through this language. So please go check this person's TikTok out. I'm sure there's even more interesting content on their profile. But secondly, can we just take into the fact of how utterly nutty this is, and also how weirdly fascinating this is? At this point, it feels like Felix isn't even a real human being. I understand some people out there are gonna get mad at me for even speaking about Felix, saying that I shouldn't bring attention to him, when honestly, I kind of disagree with that. I think it is good to speak about these issues so we can prevent them from happening in the future, but also Felix is a viral person at this moment. There's nothing we can change about that now. He is known by so many people on TikTok. But what I'm trying to say here is Felix just feels like a fictional character, a villain in his own story, and I honestly think that's something that he actually probably intends. He clearly has such a weird level of ego and also just, I guess, main character syndrome. He really wants there to be this storyline, and I think given how much we've managed to go through, given how this deep dive has gotten so deep, it really just shows how much effort and just in general, the sheer intricate amount of effort Felix is willing to go to just in general build his whole, I guess, universe of this fantasy story, which again, outside of Felix Cipher would be normal, but given everything that I've mentioned, makes it even more insane. But talking of his universe, in these TikToks, the code actually does eventually manage to get fully deciphered. A lot has happened since my last. I told Overdine about the Black Star. Amafreya, she's decided to change the name to that. Ron, what I've gathered, she's searching for her own identity. I feel us growing very close as I recover. She told me about the awful bullying she's endured, and I trust her enough to tell her what's happened to me throughout my life. And I think what's incredible about this is even in a hidden language which required so much effort to decipher, it once again seems like more literature, which is just a reflection of Felix Cipher himself. And that is why I've been saying that this whole secret language is different to just a regular author. I think this is just him really trying to put in some detail into creating his, I guess, perfect world. And moving away from this language deciphering, we then can go and look at a public interview that I somehow managed to find. Again, I've been staying up until like 4 a.m. doing the research in this deep dive, but I somehow managed to find an old interview where somebody interviewed Felix about these books, and it pretty much just backs up everything that I just said. So the interview starts off with just basic questions, asking why Felix wrote these books, and Felix replied to that saying, "Ever since I was young, I've had stories in my head that I've attempted to write down. Heaven's Demons was no different, but for some reason, I found that I never forgot about the project over time, like I did with other ones. I've been with it for 5 years, and I still remember the late evening during sophomore year of high school where I began typing the very first words of the book." Now honestly, ladies and gentlemen, this does seem like a pretty normal author response, but it's the bit after this where things start to get a little bit dodgy. So the interviewer says, "How long did it take you to put the idea on paper?" And Felix says, "Writing Heaven's Demons took me all of half a year, but with editing and my perfectionistic tendencies, I've only just recently started to show my work to the public." And the interviewer says, "You were a student when you wrote this. How difficult was it writing and navigating school together?" And Felix says, "During high school, writing was my only escape from reality, and it gradually turned into a way for me to express some of my inner feelings. It wasn't too hard for me to balance schoolwork and writing, as personally, I was out of school a lot for my mental health." And now, to be honest with you, I do kind of feel a little bit silly, because the whole point of this video has been like putting pieces together like it's a puzzle to prove my conclusive point of Felix Cipher using his art. I say art, it's failed art, but it's some form of art as a way to present his own personal views and opinions. And here he is literally admitting admitting to this, and I think this can go back to his story of supposed reincarnation. Because it's very clear that Felix does have a lot of wild thoughts and feelings in his head that have stuck there for a very long time, and the thing that he's like to tell us all for his entire time on the internet is, oh, I've had this vision since I was 5 years old, and that means that I am definitely this thing. He's never taken to the context of maybe he is severely unwell. It's definitely a thing, but when it comes to his fantasy literature novels, which have also been stuck in his head, he seems to believe that's fantasy, when the reality is, Felix, all of these things are fantasy. And I think the only reason that he's claiming that his visions at 5 years old aren't fantasy is because he does hold these horrible political beliefs and these horrible views about people in general, and I think he has used this justification of his weird supposed vision as an excuse for these beliefs. And again, that probably does just come into the whole self-hatred aspect of things. I think that the reality is this is a very troubled human being, and their brain has probably played a lot of tactics and techniques into excusing and justifying his actions. But despite that, I think the entire moral of the story and the conclusive thing that we can take from this massive video is, even if you are struggling, it doesn't justify horrible actions, even if that is some form of a coping mechanism. Because, ladies and gentlemen, most people out there that have had mental struggles have lashed out and have said and done bad things. But the thing is after they do those bad things, they apologize. But also, those bad things aren't usually saying that you are a certain Austrian leader of a political party in the 1940s that were the worst party in the history of mankind. So, where do we actually go from here? Because there's been a lot of things that we've been speaking about, and I've been repeating myself for about 2 hours now, and honestly, I just kind of want to go to bed, so I don't really know where we go from here. So I guess the question will be, well, where does Felix go from here? Because when you go into Felix's Reddit right now, you can see that there is a lot of update posts out there, a lot of leaked messages of where Felix has basically claimed that he was in hospital and that's why he was absent from social media for all of these months. And I guess it does just show that there has been absolutely no learning whatsoever, and in fact, his absence from social media wasn't him growing and changing and probably getting some form of actual professional help, but it was just, oh, I actually couldn't post because I have no access to a phone. So yes, to kind of come to some form of conclusion to this massive saga of the Felix Cipher cinematic universe, it's genuinely difficult to come to a conclusion because I honestly hold zero empathy for this person. But I do think the right and logical thing to do here is just to say, if you are somebody who is having Ezio Auditore level flashbacks of where you are going into the past and you are seeing yourself in the footsteps, the boots of a horrible, terrible world leader who committed the worst atrocities known to mankind, if you are experiencing that right now, please, for the love of God, don't go and buy the attire. Don't go and buy the books. Don't go and write any books in sequels to what was written in the past. Don't do any of that. Tell a professional and get some professional help. It doesn't mean that you are this person. It means that you are nuts. And look, I get it. Whenever I say somebody is nuts, people are like, oh, that's a very nasty word to use to describe a mentally ill. I don't care. I just don't. I'm sorry. I just don't care right now. All right. Sorry. But yeah, overall, Felix Cipher is obviously a terrible person whose ego has made them refuse to back down from absolutely everything, which has driven them down pathways which are just absolutely insane and driven them away from his loved ones and just in general his work and everything that this man originally had in his life. Felix Cipher has lost everything due to a consequence of his own actions. And I'll end this by saying, Felix Cipher, if you're watching this video right now, please stay away from my eggs. Oh, I almost forgot. I did actually almost forget. The whole 10th question. Okay, so what I asked in the interview from earlier in this video was pretty much, is they got anything else to say? And they did have something else to say. They confirmed that the entire egg part of this story was indeed not true. Now, you're probably thinking, What is the egg part of this story? Well, basically, a lot of people, when the Felix Cipher story was originally blowing up, searched Felix Cipher and I think Hissing Wolf, his other name, into Google, and what it came up with was a playlist on a website which ends in hub, and it was basically explicit videos to do with eggs. I think animal eggs. So people kind of come to the conclusion that Felix has a lust for eggs. Now, this person actually claims that this isn't true, and I'm probably inclined to believe this, given that this is the ex. But ladies and gentlemen, I think if there's one thing we all kind of know, that in a relationship, sometimes people do keep things from their partner. And honestly, I've never heard of anybody called Felix Cipher. Maybe that's me being ignorant, but I just don't think it's that popular of a name, and I am still inclined to believe this egg story is true, but I am going to take it with a little grain or pinch of salt. But yes, that is where we're going to end the Felix Cipher story. This is a man who is utterly unhinged, and I really don't think there's anything else we can say. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that pretty much is the ending of the video. Thank you so much for coming along. This has been a journey, and I kind of want to address one thing before we go, and this doesn't have a script, this is just my ending outro thing. I saw like somebody on TikTok being like, Fraser rambles, he speaks for too long and repeats himself. That's just how I talk, and honestly, given how nuts the internet is, sometimes you do need to repeat your points to just drill it into people's minds so they don't take an opinion which just is based on nothing. It's just something that they've gone absolutely mental about for no apparent reason. And honestly, this is just how I chat. I like these videos to have a script and to have detail to them, but I also like these videos to be like a one-on-one conversation between me and you, like we're just sat down the pub having a chat. Yes, I'm a little bit dramatic, and no, I don't speak to my friends like this, all loud and abrasive, but I like to be natural in my videos, you know? I don't like to be a robot, so I am going to repeat myself. So I'm sorry if I've done that a lot in this video, but honestly, I'm not really sorry. But yeah, that is the end of the video. Please let me know your thoughts down below. If you have any experiences with Felix Cipher, just comment them down below, but also comment your thoughts. Do you think it's fair that I've actually spoken about the reasons to why Felix is like this? I would genuinely love to know, so please comment down below. But if you could also do me a massive favor, like this video, please, no, seriously, like this video, because you guys sometimes slack on the likes, so I'd really appreciate it if you like the video. But also comment, and podcast description, please subscribe. We're going to be very consistent on that pretty much from this week going forward. So yeah, that is the end of the video. If you have stayed for this big old massive video, please just comment down below and tell me that you've done that, because that will boost my ego very much. And if you have done that, thank you very much. That's the end. Bye bye. Peace out. Love you very much. And I'll see you in the next one. I'm going to bed now. Bye bye. Oh yeah, I also want to say, seeing as it is the ending of the video, and you guys, if you're still here, I'm not sure why, but I kind of want to spend this time by firstly thanking Jacket, who is my editor. She does an amazing job with these videos, and we, as a lot of people have noticed, have been doing a lot of longer videos recently, and obviously that requires a lot of time and effort from me and Jacket. And yes, Jacket's getting paid from this, and obviously I'm getting paid by AdSense and stuff, but you know, it doesn't just take away from the fact that a thank you isn't necessary. So if you could all do me a favor, just go and follow Jacket on social media. Jacket works on making their own music and stuff like that. So if you want to go follow Jacket on Twitter, that would be amazing. Please go just tweet this photo at Jacket right now after you finish this video. That would very much entertain me. But also, I want to put out a big thank you to Foxlaw and also Snowbunny. I know Snowbunny has no idea who I am and probably doesn't even realize that I'm going to use their video. But again, a big thanks to those two. I don't know anything about them. I don't know the views they hold, but for their contributions to this video and the conclusions that we've made, obviously it's helped very much with what they have done, especially the deciphering, no pun intended, of Felix's language. That whole part of this genuinely was like absolutely insane to read, and this entire saga has just made me extremely tired. So I will do another ending to this video. Again, this is more for the people that I guess are actually subscribed to me. Could you also do me personally a favor and follow my Instagram, because I don't care about Twitter. Twitter is just a hellscape at this point. But if you want to, you know, interact with me, I do Q&As and stuff. Go follow my iNabber Instagram. It's there. I don't have many followers because my original account got deleted. But if if you could do me a favor, go follow there. And if we do gain some more followers on there, maybe I'll start doing more live streams on there, just of me doing whatever I do on my day-to-day basis. But yeah, I feel like that's pretty much everything. I don't think I have any other thoughts. I don't even know if this bit's going to be edited. It's just maybe me waffling and you guys maybe listening, but also, yeah, just in general, thanks for all the support. You guys are honestly incredible, and this video was so unbelievably long, and I hope the next one is at least like 30 minutes long. Not at least, no, maximum 30 minutes long, because I really enjoy making these videos, but when you get to the whole ending process, when you're finally at the last hurdle, it becomes tiring. But yeah, again, here's the second goodbye. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out. Love you very much. Bye-bye. And no, that isn't /parasocial.